Hello everybody, we just finished watching the 10th episode of the Bleach 1000-Year Blood War arc, and of course today, I want to talk about it in all of its glory, so without further ado, let's get started. So to start off with all of the housekeeping stuff, this is episode number 367 overall, episode 10 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and the episode is titled The Battle, it's the battle between Kenpachi and Unohana that we saw last time, right? Now, I've got a few things to say about that last review. First off, I don't know if it came across, but I am just really not a fan of how this battle starts, right? I think last episode didn't really do a whole lot for me, and also with how the manga skipped a few chapters to put them in here in this episode I'll talk about here in a second. It's just really not my favorite thing. And it just led to that episode not really being a good one for me. So, if you saw my thumbnail, is Bleach now bad? I just didn't really find a whole lot of joy out of that episode, right? Let me just say this. This episode, in my opinion, I think is maybe the best episode we've got, right? The Yuhabak versus Yamamoto stuff was great. Ichigo to his darkest hour was amazing, right? But I think this episode is really great for what this series wants to capture in its atmosphere, right? Now, last time I didn't get the chapters, and that was a bad thing, right? Because last time they actually moved around some content in the greatest fashion they have so far, right? So here on my paper, I've got a bunch of numbers that are just really strewn about. But let me try to make sense of these, right? So this episode starts with chapter 525, right? That's where we left off last time, end of a Queen Break chapter with Unohana versus Kenpachi, right? And then we go to about 527 and a half-ish, right? Because this is the end of that fight with Kenpachi, and of course we've got some expanded scenes in here, but it's the end of that fight, right? At that point, we go back to 522, where we see Oh-Etsu, and then we continue on to 523 to about a half, and at that half is where the actual battle with the Kenpachi starts, and then we go back to 227, finish out that chapter, and then we see the first page of chapter 228, right? So it's a lot of sort of going back and forth, but I have to say, I was very upset last time that we did not get to see Oh-Etsu Naima, but whenever I watch this episode, they really did a good job at reorganizing everything to make it work correctly and to make a very good product at the end of the day, right? So with all of that mess of chapters, I'll try to put that on the screen for you to try to make sense of it. I'd say that it's time to go through the episode as a whole and talk about it, because I think this could really be a great episode, right? So, we start off with Kenpachi versus Unohana, right? As Kenpachi comes back to himself and he's like, oh no, I had another blackout. How many times has that been now? As we see, he just gets stabbed through again by Unohana, who is apparently killing him and then bringing him back to life so that they can fight some more, right? At this point, our opening, Scar by Tatsuya Kitane, plays. Great opening, really grown on me, just great opening overall, right? And I have to say, whenever we come back from the opening, we get the title drop, which is the battle, right? And this is done on a really nice thing of, I forget if it's Kenpachi or Unohana's sword that gets swung through, decapitates or harms somebody, right? And as the blood drips off, just the battle is engraved on the blade. It's just a really cool visual that I would definitely say check out. I mean, I would say check out this episode and Bleach as a whole, and if you're watching this, I would have to think that you probably already have, right? We see that Unohana, back in the day, is trying to look for a very strong swordsman to fight against, being that she wants to fulfill her duty as the first Kenpachi and slaughter some folks, right? Pretty much, there's this massive body pile that forms behind her, and there's this young Kenpachi who's up on the top, pretty much there, right? And we get all this narration that, they were both bored, right? Fighting for them had become a stalemate because they were always the strongest. But these two characters eventually came together and combined their power, sort of made them great rivals in a way. They were both so powerful, it just made them equally good, right? We see that eventually Kenpachi stabs Unohana through her neck, and of course this is where that scar that Unohana had before comes from, right? And at this point, Unohana continues on this narration, and she's like, Kenpachi, you didn't know it back then, but you fought the strongest person that you would ever fight, right? And to find that joy of battle again, because you had defeated the strongest, you put locks or limiters on yourself to lower down your power, right? And only by being on the brink of death do you surpass those limits. And she makes a note of, hey, that's how you almost only beat Kenpachi, you almost beat Ichigo, how you almost died to Noitora Gilga, right? And it's just because of this right here. And she's like, every time I kill you, your power rises back up to what it was once before, right? These locks are coming off, your restraints are falling down, right? And Kenpachi's like, I truly have a joy of fighting on the edge. And she says, I gave you that thing, right? I gave you the way to understand that this is what you want, and that is my sin, is making you put locks on yourself so you could enjoy battle, right? As stupid as this may be, right, the way that it's animated in this episode and the way that it's spoken by both the Japanese voice actors for both Unohana and Kenpachi is amazing. It truly just shows what they were trying to get across, and it just really works to make a good, solid product that I personally want to watch. It's great. I can't complain about it whatsoever, right? So at this point, Unohana says this out loud to Kenpachi, all this stuff about him suppressing his power, as she reveals her Bankai. Of course, we have never seen Unohana's Bankai until now. We've seen her Shikai, which is the manta ray thing, right? I don't remember quite what it does, but I think it's like a healing transport vessel thing in a way. But we see that her Bankai is called Minazuki, right? And so back in the days of the manga, before this anime was animated, I'm pretty sure most people thought that Unohana's Bankai was like a poison of some kind, right? Like a vial, like it just creates poison, the blade is poison that rots away your bones, right? But here we see that it is a blood sword, right? And it's got, like, she draws it into ground for it to, like, soak up blood, and it just does even more damage, and also it melts you, right? As we see, like, Kenpachi, like, his body is melting away, right? It's decomposing, right? And Kenpachi and Unohana continue to have this fight, as Kenpachi's like, I see, I've been asleep. And we see this battle continue on, as Kenpachi's like, thank you, Unohana, you have finally taught me the true meaning of what a battle is. As this entire time, this greatly animated scene of Kenpachi versus Unohana is going on, and they're just fighting, right? And at this point, Unohana's like, there can only ever be one Kenpachi, right? As she realizes that that Zaraki has gotten the most power that he will ever have, and Kenpachi eventually stabs Unohana through, right? And as Unohana's dying, Kenpachi's like, hey, don't die on me, we still need to fight more. As Unohana's like, yep, you're still a kid till the very end, right? And we see this just sentiment, in a way, of Unohana just being like, Kenpachi, there can only ever be one Zaraki. I was the first Zaraki, you being the 9th, you are the next Zaraki, and you will continue on that legacy. You have had everything I have. You were the one man that really gave me a joy in battle. Thank you. As we see that Unohana's finally dead, and Zaraki's like, oh no, I need to save her, I want more battle. As we see this voice that comes into Kenpachi's mind, and it's like, Kenpachi Zaraki, come talk to me. And as Zaraki's like, who is that? We get an illumination on his blade, as we see that Zaraki's blade is finally giving its true voice. And, of course, we know that Zanpakuto's spirits are talking through battle, and that his Zanpakuto has finally reached him. So he will now be able to have a Shikai no Bankai. So, this battle between Kenpachi and Unohana is very greatly done in this episode. Last episode, I really felt like it wasn't too good, but here it was amazing. And of course, here's where we go back to the rest of the chapters, meet Oh-Etsu Naima, where we were a few chapters ago in the manga. First off, I think this really works to switch at this point, because we're finally getting Kenpachi Zanpakuto, and of course, as we'll see here in a second, Oh-Etsu Naima is the creator of the Zanpakuto. So, of course, he has stuff to do with it, and we'll get to that now. Right, so we see that Ichigo and Renji finally arrived in the Huiden, right? It's Huden, right? I think it's the Huden. That's the Oh-Etsu's palace, right? Ichigo and Renji are there, right? And we see this man named Oh-Etsu Naima, right? He's the creator of the Zanpakuto, and he's like this DJ, kind of a wacky guy, right? And we see that he has like this divine power almost to just be funny and silly, right? I really enjoy Oh-Etsu as a character, and he is the blade god Oh-Etsu Naima, right? He's got this really crazy vibe around him, and pretty much he introduces himself to Renji and Ichigo. Shenanigans ensue, and then he calls over this Lady Mera to take them somewhere else, right? But where they entrance this first time is into this dive bar sort of thing, right? This Galaxy Huiden, which has all of these babes just all dressed up, very skimpily clad outfits, and Ichigo and Renji are there like, is this really what, like, a retainer to the Soul King does? Like, what? And we see here that, like, Oh-Etsu makes Ichigo and Renji apologize for being mean to their swords. And there's all of this sort of stuff going on. This Mera lady comes over and takes them to the real Huiden, right? Which is just some shack in the middle of nowhere on the edge of a cliff. And Ichigo and Renji step into it, and it's this pit, right? And at this point, we see this is a pit with almost nothing in it except for a few nameless beings, and these beings are everywhere around them, right? At this point, Oh-Etsu gives this description. Everyone you've met here on this island is a Zanpakuto. I am the only Soul Reaper, right? Because Oh-Etsu has his Zanpakuto, of course, but we also see that he has Renji's Zabimaru and Ichigo's Zangetsu, right? And he takes their two blades, and he fully shatters them, showing that when somebody doesn't have a full pure heart, their Zanpakuto's shattered like nothing has ever happened, right? As he fully destroys these Zanpakutos, he says, you two, you guys are in a pit with these things called Asauchi, right? You need to make it out alive, and if you make it out alive, I'll make you a sword. But I don't make swords for losers. As he sort of says this, and pretty much we see that these Asauchi are temporary Zanpakuto spirits that have gone and eventually become the personalized Zanpakuto, like a Zabimaru or a Zangetsu, right? But we'll see more about that here in a second, right? I'm sorry, this is a lot of information here on my paper, right? So pretty much these Asauchis are temporary Zanpakutos, and Ichigo and Renji have to survive in this pit to be able to get an Asauchi to form their own blade, right? And we see that Oh-Etsu Naima is like, I create the Zanpakuto. I am the sword god Oh-Etsu Naima. As he leaves Ichigo and Renji to survive in this hole, as he leaves on the note saying, which is superior, a Soul Reaper or a Zanpakuto? At this point, we cut back to Mugen, where Kenpachi is there with his blade and a dead Unohana, as we see Kenpachi leaving, obviously knowing now the name of his sword, right? At this point, the ending Salahate by Serian plays. Ending's the ending. But at this point, we get sort of a more after-credits scene, which I think is the perfect way to do this, because originally, we end with Ichigo being thrown into pit, and then we go to this battle with Kenpachi, right? And then we come back to what happens in a second. And if we just go from Ichigo to this next Ichigo stuff, it doesn't really feel like time has passed like it should have. But with how they reworked the anime, it really feels like this time has passed. and it works very well overall, right? So we see Oh-Etsu Naima walk back up to this area as he says, wow, 71 hours and 48 minutes. You guys nearly survived 3 days. As he looks down into pit and he's like, congratulations, Renji, you pass. But Ichigo, you fail. And Ichigo's like, come on, I can do it. I can still fight some more. And Oh-Etsu says, hey, kid, there's no limit to how much time you can say in here, true. But it only matters if you get picked by a Nasa-Uchi. Renji over here was, while you were not. Right? And Ichigo's just like, but wait, I can still do it. And pretty much what Oh-Etsu says is like, one of you is coming out of here a Soul Reaper, and one of you is not. Ichigo, you are not a Soul Reaper, right? Go home. You can't come back. And also, the Soul Society is for Soul Reapers, and you aren't a Soul Reaper, so don't come back. And as Ichigo's like, no, I don't want to go, Mira jumps into the hole, picks him up, and starts to send him through a portal back to his world of the living, right? And Oh-Etsu says, hey, remember, I don't make swords for losers. As he sort of takes Ichigo, throws him in this portal, and Ichigo disappears in this portal, right? But then Oh-Etsu says, hey, you don't understand the reality of this situation. You fought so long without a Nasa-Uchi, it's crazy insane, right? And he says, Ichigo, go back, try to learn from your roots. And maybe if you learn from your roots, you'll learn what it really means to be a Soul Reaper. As we see that Ichigo has appeared in front of the Kurosaki Clinic as all this rain is just pouring around them, right? And at this point, we get the episode title for episode 11, of course, and it is titled Everything But the Rain. So, this was this episode. If you know anything about Bleach and you know what the rain is significant for, you understand what's happening next. We are getting the Everything But the Rain flashback having to do with Ichigo's extended backstory, right? So we are getting that next episode, but really, this stuff with Oh-Etsu is great. I don't really think I can understand why I like it so much, because I'm pretty sure this episode is already way over the limit that I like them to be, and also I'm getting this out a day late, so it's not really the best situation. But this whole thing with Oh-Etsu is great. It really shows what it's supposed to show, and it just really goes to show, I'm not saying show a lot, but just how great Oh-Etsu is, and this whole idea of new Zanpakutos and finding from your roots to get them, right? Really, I don't have a whole lot more to say about this episode. I genuinely think this is the best episode we have so far, and Oh-Etsu's personality, his voice, all the stuff with Kenpachi and Unohana, the added scenes that they did with that fight, it just all goes to make a great thing that I don't think I can complain about whatsoever. So for that, again, this is going to be Bleach, 1000 Year Blood War Arc, episode 10, The Battle, episode number 376 overall, the message chapters, and yeah, I'll see you next time for episode 11, titled Everything But the Rain. I'll see you next time. This is Glowplasma231, out.